sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on a Monday. A lot to talk about from this past weekend. Lots and lots of NFL action. And, of course, our special guest, former Titan safety, Blaine Bishop, is going to be joining us here on the program. Welcome to the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making it part of your day. So much we have to discuss because lots of different plays. And I was kind of surprised with a few teams, but usually up in week threes, you kind of get a sense of what these teams are going to look like. And you also have a sense of who's pretty much up and onto the hot seats. So we've already saw Thursday. Then we get into Sunday and we got tonight's game. So I want to start with this. I want to talk about the New York Giants here for just about a couple brief moments because, first of all, even as the Kansas City Chiefs, their offense does not completely look the same. But that doesn't mean that on the other side of things, I'm watching a team that just is looking god-awful, atrocious, and boring. And the New York Giants right now, this is just not the best time whatsoever to look like this kind of football team. And right now, Brian Dable is up and under a lot of heat. And so last night, I got a chance to see a couple of highlights, but I mean, Kansas City's offense, they haven't really quite clicked. But that doesn't mean that the Giants couldn't even get anything going up on offense. The offense stunk. Now, even if the defensive front, and this is what I've continuously talked about with the New York Giants, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Giants, even as a team that loves their front seven, if you cannot protect the quarterback and you don't quite have at least the offensive personnel to make this work, and I couldn't even believe my eyes, but the Giants, for whatever reason, and I understand New York media, I've been there 6 times in my life. It's brutal, it's harsh, and whenever you get into these spurts where you're not winning games in New York, go ask Yankee fans, go ask Met fans. They'll tell you exactly what happens to the team when they're not quite on the winning streaks. And the Giants, I mean, now you're kind of forced upon, are you going to start Jackson Dart? Because right now, Russ, he's not quite the Russ of Seattle, and you're trying to get the most out of him. I understand Giants fans in one point where you don't want to rush out the young kid. But I'll tell you one thing about New York sports. There's a ticking, there's time ticking. You don't really quite have a whole lot of time. And that's just the high expectation. It's just kind of their nature. It's hard. And I've even said this about the Giants build. They were so focused on the defensive front that outside of Andrew Thomas, who are you really relying on the offensive line? Now you lost your running back in Tyron Tracy, even though I love Cam Scatterbo. That kid is phenomenal. He's got a bright future. But you got to make this work. And Jackson Dart, I know a lot of the question marks was when he came up into college, similarly like when you saw with Josh Allen. He made a lot of mistakes when he came up after college at Wyoming. Brian Dable comes in, they shape things up after the first 2 years, and he looks great. And he's Josh Allen that we know today. So Jackson Dart, I'm not saying he's going to have a similar Josh Allen build, but something has to give. I talk about this with New York sports all the time. if the Yankees aren't playing good, the Knicks aren't playing good, the Mets, the Giants, the Jets, even the Rangers and the Islanders, you're going to hear about it on the New York press. Okay, that's just how it is. Or you'll hear it in New York media at your local radio station. That's just how New York is. Okay, they're brutal, brash, and they're honest because they want to see change. Ever since Tom Coughlin left, what have the Giants really accomplished since then? And it's hard to figure that out. So again, how do you go from 1 week where you stunk it, next week you're playing a defense that you know is wide open in Dallas, and you put up nearly 40 plus, and then you come in this Sunday night and you put up 9. Something doesn't make sense. I don't understand it, but something has to change up in New York. Otherwise, you're going to hear a lot of sharks in media coming after you if you don't get this right. And I feel bad for Brian Daboll up into this one, but you kind of are now pinned in a corner. And if you can't figure it out, that's where somebody's going to hit the gavel and somebody's going to be out of a job very quickly. So talking about defenses and somebody very familiar with it, 4-time Pro Bowler, and has spent years with the Houston Oilers and the Tennessee Titans, and also spending a brief time with the Philadelphia Eagles playing alongside with Brian Dawkins. Proud to bring up onto the show here, Blaine Bishop, former NFL safety, joins us here on the program. I gotta tell you though, Blaine, I mean, you know, for someone that familiarized with defenses, you know, and I think with the Giants, I just don't understand it. Like, you got to have a perfect balance. I love the front seven, but if that offense doesn't quite get going, it's hard to really rely on an offense that's not putting up points like they should. And you got to get after the quarterback. You got to put up pressures. But if your defense is out there for an X amount of time, it's just really, really hard to like even put any points up for that matter.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jake. What happens is, you only have so many plays in your game, so you don't want your defense or vice versa, your offense playing 80 plays, and then the offense plays 40 plays. I remember that happened on occasion, and we're halfway through, and then the offensive guys are all leaving. I mean, we're watching the film to get great. I'm like, hey man, where y'all going? Hey, we're done watching film. Like, it was a fun, like, what? Like, oh man, we only halfway through. So eventually, the accumulation of that over a season, your defense is going to wear out if it's that side of the ball that's not, it's playing a lot of the plays, and it wears on the guys, and eventually, hey man, shoot, they got to hold their weight because we can't control it, or they're on the other side too. It works both ways. So there's going to be some games where early on in the season, the first 8 weeks, where it's going to look a little unbalanced depending on what side of the ball you're very strong at, as far as your personnel, with the different players. So the Titans are kind of dealing with the same thing, probably a little bit worse, where they have no elite pass rushers on the Tennessee Titans, not one.
Yeah.
And we don't have, we got Snead, who's coming off an injury. He's still not up to that status at cornerback. And then offensively, we just have really Cam Ward. So it is like watching paint dry sometimes. So I sympathize for you, but I think right now the Titans got to be, in a tough spot, and trying to develop their quarterback yet, not having the pieces, whether it's weaponry or already the offensive line is having trouble with injuries. And, one guy, Moore Jr., that they signed for the Steelers, started the last 4 years, mid-round pick, is not playing up to the, big contract. So that's a whole nother ball of wax there. So yeah, man, we're at the bottom of the totem pole. I know we're both 0-3. You were talking about the Giants, but man, I don't know. I think the Giants probably would bring it to the Titans. It's not looking good.
And it's interesting because, I mean, watching the Titans, I mean, I've seen this team with its highs and lows. You certainly playing along with a lot of different teams as well in your current, in your playing career. And I just look at this, like, the Titans right now are pretty much in rebuild mode. There's no question. Yes. I mean, I just look at this where, Cam Ward and I was saying this at the beginning. I remember watching Cam Ward being up at Washington State, and he's highly talented, can be mobile, and he's got a very good arm in the pocket. But when he came out and said, I'm gonna go into the draft, I was like, okay, look, Cam, you're probably going to be a day 3 quarterback, just being honest with you with where things were going. I was happy when he took another year in college because it gave him time to develop. It gave him time to really kind of work out those kinks. Now he's the number 1 overall pick and comes to Tennessee. And it's unfortunate with some of the things that haven't worked out. I mean, Will Levis, a shoulder surgery, things were just not quite working. But I look at Cam Ward, Blaine, and his mobility, arm accuracy. If you could get this kid some help, maybe there's a chance there's going to be a resurgence at some point here for the Titans in the next couple of years. What do you make of Cam Ward? And I could safely say he is the future of this franchise. You just got to be able to give him some helping pieces.
Yeah, and they're developing. They got 2 young receivers who are getting up to speed, now that the regular season has started. So they're starting to show glimpses. DK and Alec Iamana from Stanford, even though they were mid-round picks, they're contributing a lot on special teams and at receiver. And they seem to have rhythm and flow with Cam Ward. Cam Ward is definitely a dude. Regardless if he has to have a new coach next year, new offensive coordinator, whatever it may be, it's his leadership skills that stand out. His leadership skills as well as his accuracy. His mobility, I think, is overrated as far as how athletic he is. I think he has enough mobility to buy time in the pocket and to get outside the pocket if he needs to. He is not a runner. I don't know if he's even as much of a runner in the NFL as even Mahomes, but he has some escapability, has a great feel for the pocket presence. He's starting to show signs a little bit now of drifting to the left a little bit. I think it's because all the pressure he's feeling all the time. And then like in college, you don't hardly feel pressure because there's not a lot of guys around you. Where in the pros, there's guys around you all the time. And he's starting to kind of start drifting because he's gotten sacked the most in the NFL so far. I think it's around 11 or 12 or so. But other than that, he has thrown some spectacular throws. Some that you say, no. And they go, like do one all the way from the other side over to you. Like, oh my gosh. Only some of those Hall of Fame yellow jacket guys throwing those kind of passes. And so he definitely shows you glimpses of he's going to be special. It's just going to take time. They are rebuilding, as you mentioned, and it's just hard to be patient. And hopefully you don't ruin the quarterback with the offensive line issues. I think that'll always be a topic if it does become an issue. Do you get your line and pieces first because, the Titans had the number 1 pick, or do you take that franchise quarterback, and then you could eventually ruin him with not all the pieces in place? So that'll always be a, form of discussion of Cam Ward and what he will become, whether it's with the Titans or somebody else. But I think he has all the tools at worst case scenario, based on what I've seen in regular season, not off season, preseason, an average starting quarterback. That's it. That's the low bar. Like, I think that's easy. I think he's already there. He's a cool customer, man. And it's I'm just, he's old school playing in the modern era. That's what I appreciate about him. And I'll say that because one time they asked him a question because he gets up there at 4:30 all the time, and he goes, "Oh man, 4:30. I wake up to 4:30 to get over to do something that I love, and it's something I enjoy. My dad had to get up at 4:30 and he hated his job. This is easy." Who says that in the modern era of an athlete that's 24 years old? Like, nobody really says that.
Yeah.
And so once he did that, he had me hooked. I was like, okay, let me pay attention to this guy. So yeah, he's old school, old soul, with the work ethic of a 0-star, which was what he was. And he has all the makings to me to be something really special, as long as they make sure they put the pieces around him. They definitely got them one.
It's funny because, with old school mentality, I'm 30 years old, and like usually when it comes to a lot of these youngsters, like the thing I always say is, like, with generations, the older generation, the one thing of it is like you want to just like when you got a young kid that you're trying to build, develop, and structurize to build consistency, you just want to be able to put your arms around him and guide him and really, work that. And Cam Ward, what's great about it, like he has such a fantastic work ethic. In fact, my co-host who's not here tonight, but he said a lot of great things about it. Like he wishes that the Cleveland Browns honestly picked him. But, it's hard. When you're the number 1 overall pick, you're going to be pretty much landing with a team that is struggling. They're trying to find a new identity and something new in the franchise. So it's hard, but I still appreciate the fact that, like, the kid's got a hard work ethic. I think he's got a bright future, and hopefully Tennessee, they can really build off that. And as a former defensive player like yourself, and when I looked at it, we mentioned about the defense where the edge has been kind of struggling, but for whatever reason, it was interesting because I thought last year, I'm not sure if you've seen this too, but there were times where I felt like the defensive front was pretty underrated. And it was guys like Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, and a couple others up front, where I know these guys can play physical. They're not quite out of it. And, the offensive woes was what it was going to be. But it was like defensively, I felt like this team could get physical. So when you look at it, what are kind of the things you evaluate that they need to address and to where they can get back into being that brutal, like physical force that they've been in the last few years here in the South Division?
Well, they, as you mentioned, they're rebuilding. So on defense, they have holes a little bit all over the place. But the biggest one is pass rusher. Naturally, they cut Harold Landry, and so he
Yeah.
signed with New England. And then they drafted Femi Odejo from UCLA, who's I'm not going to say is a project, but he's a converted linebacker to defensive end, which they moved in the last 6 or 7 games in college. A specimen, by the way, really good athlete, hard worker, sharp, smart. But as you know, that you have to learn how to be a pass rusher. I mean, it's totally different. And so they have, outside of Jeffrey Simmons, as far as elite, they have Sweat, who's been injured all during training camp and through these first few weeks or so. He's played limitedly, but he D tackles. But you have to have someone who's affecting the passer. And they just don't have that at this point. They're probably going to get it in the draft next year, probably have another high pick. And then I think that'll help out the defense a lot. So they got some solid linebackers and, you got Snead and Hooker at safety, solid starters in the NFL. So it's a work in progress. So I think that's the missing piece on defense. And then on offense, they need a big time playmaker. Calvin Ridley's kind of had some dropsies. Alec Manor and is young, is promising, is kind of turning into their best option to this point. I don't think he's a number 1, but he's their best option right now and dependable with not a lot of drops. And then they have Gunnar Helm and Chiga Okonkwo at tight end, so they have some decent play, as well as Pollard, who's been solid since he got here, even last year, but this year as well. So I wish he could get some more carries. But yeah, they are on the right track, and they're not as far as probably most fans or people watching because they just look at the record. But if they just got a couple of those pieces, a big time receiver and a big time passer, I think it could kind of transform the whole team once you make sure you protect the quarterback. I think they'd be okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting when I seen Brian Callahan take this job, and you got a chance to really, kind of get a feel for what he brings up to the table. Because I mean, watching him in Cincinnati as an offensive coordinator, I felt like, okay, he's around an offensive-minded guy in Zach Taylor. So I feel like, with Tennessee, they could get the offense getting to where they need to be. Where, I mean, I remember this with Mike Vrabel. It was down in the trenches, ground and pound, and then you sprinkle up some good plays, and you were physical one-on-ones, especially with AJ Brown. So when you get a chance to see the culture that Brian Callahan is in, what are some of the things that pop up to you with the head coach? Because I'm just like, okay, he's got a new quarterback. It's gonna take some time to get this reshaped. Are there some things you point out that he tends to kind of do that is fixable, or is there kind of something that may be a bit of a struggle in some of his coaching areas? Because to me, I'd love to see successes in head coaches, no doubt. But
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to see success. I mean, what a great human being. I think they definitely got that side of it right. But he's had some snafus in some games. You just kind of it puzzles you. One of them in the first game against the Broncos there at home. I think it was the Broncos, or was it
Yep.
the second game? Yeah, he should have challenged Elikai Manor, caught a pass and got his elbow in, and
Mhm.
it kind of transformed the whole game and maybe gave him a shot at winning the game, to be honest. So whatever game it was, he didn't challenge it. And then this last game was a huge no in my opinion from a head coach, and that is the Colts called timeout, then he called timeout, then he got a delay a game. So then the kicker now is kicking a 60-something yard field goal,
Mm.
and he still went for the field goal. And naturally, the kicker, since he iced his own kicker, missed.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, that happened this last game, and it really I think affected a lot of the fans. And naturally, he's like 3 and I don't know 16 or 17 something, so many losses. I think he has I saw a stat said he had the lowest winning percentage in NFL history as a head coach. I think he has potential. I think his play calling is stagnant. When I say that, I mean it doesn't have any rhyme or reason. When you're calling plays, you want to set up plays for the next play or for the next quarter. So then now you can play off that play to another play. And I don't know, it just my feel. I feel like there's two different people calling plays. Now, that's not the case, but I feel like it is. And I don't know sometimes if that's because of the offensive line issues or an injury or because of certain guys not playing well. So he's trying to just kind of do it all. And by the way, being a head coach and a play caller, he was never a play caller there with the Bengals. He was
Yeah.
only the placeholder. Now, you can be around these people all the time, but until you go through the fire of the play calling, do you really know if they're going to be real good play callers? Now, some of them transition
Right.
easier than others, naturally, but when you're trying to be a play caller and the head coach, sometimes it becomes a little bit of issue. So I probably this year would have hired a coordinator, but I just think he didn't think about that because he always wanted to be a play caller because he never really got to do it until last year. And then it was Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, and it was just a lot of stuff going on. One thing I see, though, I feel like he is a system quarterback. And I
Mhm.
don't like system quarterback. And when I say that is last year when Will Levis and Mason Rudolph get into game, different players, different styles, the results were the actual same. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's happening here. Like we don't have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase as well as Higgins. So yeah, those are the elite of the elite in this league. The
Mhm.
likelihood of you getting players like that is highly unlikely. Even Cam Ward at his highest of heights won't be as good as Joe Burrow. It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I think he needs to make some adjustments on how he game plans and lead into player strengths of who they are. I think that's what, not to bring him up, but Vrabel, he may be limited on offense and was just wanted to be physical and run Derrick Henry. But one thing he did with Will Levis is we're going to play action pass and we're going to go downtown because you got a big arm.
Mhm.
So lean into what the strengths of your players are, not your actual system. Put
Right.
your system around the skill sets of the actual players. So I think he's gradually doing that. But naturally, when you're 0-3, you just want it to be sooner than later. Um, so he's learned a lot. I think he's feeling a lot of pressure and heat at this point in time. But it'll be interesting because we have a 3-game road trip. Arizona, where you play the Texans, Arizona, then Vegas, I think, or some order of that, all on the road.
Mhm.
And we're already 0-3. So if we go 0-6, that's gonna be pretty tough, I think, to overcome. And then you come back home and play who? New England with Mike Vrabel.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's going to be a tough stretch. So it'll be interesting to see how much the team continues to improve because I think that's what you're looking for. Not only the team, but also Cam Ward, and because
Yeah.
you want to see the coaching. They got you would know Bones Falso as a special team coach. He's done an exceptional job. That's kind of solidified. He had hired someone last year that had no experience as a special team coach in the National Football League, and and naturally they didn't do so well. Good, a friend of his, but that's how coaching is. You hire your friends or people you associate with, and Fossil is legit. So they have done really well there. But defensively and offensively, it's up and down like a roller coaster, even throughout games. Like they're
Yeah.
supposed to be able to stop the run. They can't even stop the run now.
Yeah, it is interesting, but yeah, I have seen a change in the special teams, which is a bit, it's a step. But yeah, I mean, I would feel the same exact way. If it's an 0-6 stretch after these next 3 road games, that's not gonna really fly well for a lot of Titans fans that really want to see the progress. But it does happen. I mean, that's the nature of being a coach in the NFL. Is this is where you really show what your true identity is. And if you are that coach with the it factor, because that's going to be important, especially when you're coaching these grown men that are out there on the field of battle. And you got to be able to win those games in every single spurt of the snap, just the play, and then get to the end of the quarter. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it is going to be interesting for sure.
I think that's where he's coming up short. We've asked him multiple times. They have no identity. I think he wants identity is we're going to throw it around the yard and we're going to score points. Well, they average 15 points or so, or it was less than 18 last year, and right now they're at 16. So they're not that team. So the identity and then having some form of it factor. I just think he doesn't have that kind of weight with him.
Yeah, I agree.
We've gone in 20 games deep now, so you pretty much sure it's like watching a player. You pretty much sure, like already I know Cam Ward is a dude after 3 games, right?
Yeah.
Even though his passer percentage is at 50, if you watched the game, you wouldn't have felt like that's what happened. Like, those are smart plays. He took a sack. He threw it out of bounds. Maybe he should have got rid of the ball sooner. He was trying to make a play and got sacked. Okay, well, that's a learning lesson, at least in your rookie year. So everything that he's done, even though it's not being spectacular, you see like, whoa, this guy's got something. He's special. So I think right now that has not happened with head coach Callahan. It's going to be a learning process, but at this point in time, I think he needs to speed up the learning process of game management in games, because if not, that's kind of the no, I think, from the organization. It'll be interesting to see, because I wish him well, because he's a great dude, man.
Yeah.
And he says all the right things. I don't know, just on game day, it just never pans out where I feel like we're going to be able to score a lot of points, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, no, still waiting for it, but yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on it. I do want to ask this question for you, and just as a final, and so I got a chance to watch the documentary that involved you played with him in the past, was the late Steve McNair. And I'm not going to go deep into detail, but you got a chance to experience, an atmosphere and a culture change the minute that the Titans they came into fruition. And it took the league by storm. Nobody was even expecting that. And so you had Jeff Fisher, who defensive minded, the guy was all about physicality, and that's what built, Tennessee. You get a chance to play around, Javon Curse and multiple other really good defensive players. And you make a Super Bowl appearance, which was unheard of for many teams like that. From your experience, and to share with our audience what that at that time, like what that was like, because that had to have been nerve-wracking for one. But when you guys started getting on that hot streak and just like, look, we're playing ball, we're feeling good, and we're giving a statement to our fan base like, hey, we're actually stamping on the NFL, like we are here, like we're putting together this culture. Like, what was that like in that year? Because I was like, the excitement, intensity, and then you get into the Super Bowl and it's like, damn, like that's insane.
Yeah, that's really weird that you say that, because of even the next year, the team was better because we knew we were really good then. But that first year in '99, I think a lot of things happened there. We had finally transformed from Tennessee Oilers to the Tennessee Titans. We had our own stadium, new uniforms, and that was the first year of Javon Curse, who knew what he was going to turn into, because nobody knew that was going to happen. there on the defense, me being the captain of the defense, and McNair and Eddie on offense. So once 2 or 3 games in, he started impacting games, and they had to start doubling it. It made everybody's job so much easier on the defense, and then he was causing havoc and turnovers and man, all kind of things on defense. So it kind of elevated our whole entire defense and really our team at that time. We had the pieces on the offensive side and the physicality, and we wanted to be aggressive nature, blitzing, and under Greg Williams as our defensive coordinator, and yeah, it worked out well. I don't think we thought we were going to be like that. I think we thought we were going to be good, but we had been 8-8 or middle of the road for 3 years in a row with all the transition of moving and playing at Vanderbilt, then Memphis, and then finally in our stadium. And everybody was super excited, and we just kind of went on a run. I think probably after we beat the Rams, I think early in this, it was, I don't know, maybe week 6 at home. I think that's when people start realizing, hey, man, this team is for real. We got them on grass. Naturally, in Tennessee, it was on grass. So we were pretty confident as the season went along that we were really good. And then we beat the Jaguars, who were really good that year, only lost 2 games, and those 2 games were to us, and their third game was to us. If not, they would have been undefeated in the AFC Championship. So, and then we had Music City Miracle happen. When stuff like that happens in a game against Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs or second round, I thought we were a team of destiny. Really, at that point, I thought we were going to win everything. After that, then we beat the Colts and Peyton Manning and all their Hall of Fame players, and then it went on to the AFC Championship and beating Jacksonville in Jacksonville, and then going to Super Bowl. So playing the greatest show on turf, coming up a little bit short. So yeah, that kind of the confidence level of our team was really, really on a high level at that point in time, and even going into the next season. And then we lost in the second round to the Ravens, who we had number 1 defense in some categories as well as they did. Their style was a little bit different than ours as far as they did a lot of talking, where we just put on our hard hats and let our work do the talking. And so, yeah, we came up a little bit miffed on that, giving up only 120 or 30 yards the entire game. And then because that was the better team as far as the Titans teams. That team there was the best team, even though we didn't even make it to the Super Bowl.
It's such a story, because it's like, because I love, listening to a lot of these stories from former players and getting the chance to reminisce and really experience that, because it's like, I love being behind the wheel as the driver in the seat, and getting the chance to man, what that's like, and the challenges, the adversity, but then it's like the magic momentum is like, it's unexplainable, man. It's insane. But
and then to think I was in a Super Bowl, everybody's dream as a boy was to play in a Super Bowl, thinking that would never really happen. And I really appreciate, because I played with I called him the living legend, Bruce Matthews.
Yep.
Who I think played 19 or 20 years or so, and that was his only Super Bowl he ever got to play in. And that shows you how precious that time and moment, and you think you're going to get back and you never get back. So I was really sad for him, more so than anything else. You have such a spectacular career and one of the best linemen in NFL history, and you get one shot. And so yeah, you just never know, man. Timing, get on a run at the right time, man, can go a long way. As you can see with the Giants, who was just average during the regular season through their times were there with Eli, and then they got hot at the right time, and then boom, he pulled the trigger.
Yeah, it's funny. It can happen for any team, and that's why the NFL is the way that it is. I mean, you'll have shockers, surprises, but I think that's just what makes the game just much more interesting every single year. But yeah, a hell of a career from Bruce Matthews. I mean, loved watching him play, and yeah, to have the opportunity, it falls short, but you can stamp on it like we finally made it here. Like we had a great momentum, a fun team, and a team that just was unexpected to get there, but it was fun either way. But Blaine,
let me say, I wanted to say revision may be history, and I'm gonna say this just so we can look back on and see how close I am. They are building the Titans a new stadium. It'll open in 2027. What happened in 1999 when we got a new stadium? We went to the Super Bowl.
Hey, there you go.
This time they're gonna win it. They're gonna win it.
That 2 and 2 connect right from there. I love it, man. Blaine, Absolutely appreciate you. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here up onto the show, man. Take care of yourself. Enjoy the rest of the week, man. And look, we'll see what happens up with the Titans, but I'm going to love watching the future of Cam Ward for the next few years, man. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself and enjoy the rest of the week, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Peace.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a great, like, it's cool to have an opportunity like that. And I love stories like that. It's fun, it's energetic, and you just can't get enough of it. Got a good show here. Really loved the interview. Very down to earth, and just, yeah, I remember watching the documentary and just the momentum itself and just the way that the team's chemistry and morale, it was just unexplainable. Couldn't even explain it to you myself, but he explained it the best way, man, and I absolutely loved every bit of that. All right, folks. Well, like we said, the NFL kicked off and underway as we get ready for week 4. But before we do, we got the Monday Night Football picks here tonight between the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions. A lot of fun. But don't miss out on the action of what Payday Fantasy can do for you, getting your payday on your daily fantasy pick'ems. They are your destination for the fun, best pick'em online betting that you could choose here. And Payday's great because they set up all the lines weekly. And all you got to do is pick the player, pick the over-under, watch back at the game, and get paid. It's that simple. Pretty easy to sign up. Link is in the description, folks. And check out Payday for yourselves, guys, and enjoy it with friends, coworkers, family, anybody and everybody to checking out Payday Fantasy. And when you do, by the way, a special offer for you guys, 100% deposit match of up to $100 only by using the code SNAKE. That is code SNAKE for 100%. Deposit match at $100. Check out Payday Fantasy. Sign up, pick the player, sit back, and get paid with Payday Fantasy.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
So inarguably, one of the fun games I had the pleasure of hanging out and just checking out the watch party was Denver against the Chargers. What a game that it was, with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh just working perfectly up and in harmony. There was no question. I mean, the way that game ended up going, I mean, Denver was a very physical team, and there's no question about it. But the problem of it was, offensively, they just could not end up pulling the trigger, and neither was it that it was a kind of game in which that again, it separates the boys from the men. And I think Sean Payton is a very good coach. I'm not knocking on him at all drastically. But I will say this. Jim Harbaugh, to his credit and to his extent, Jim definitely knows how to build a culture and knows exactly how to instill a winning mentality type of culture. And that's what he's about. Jim just sees everything that's happening up and in front of him. And the biggest takeaway up and into the game is the Chargers, they were basically out physical, and Najee Harris goes down with an Achilles injury, which now he's done for the season. But a lot of this was the narrative on Justin Herbert. As you could see, 28 of 47, 300 passing yards, a touchdown and a pick. But the most important drives are usually always the drives that are late. And how many times has Herbert been criticized for clutch moment drives? He's had that almost every year. And yet people continue to write him off as a quarterback. And what I don't get is because when you look at certain quarterbacks and you look at their it factors, I don't see a ton of that when it comes to Brock Purdy, even though he's a very good quarterback. Last pick of the draft, it's a great story. But sometimes, San Francisco and with Kyle Shanahan, it's a whole system thing. But the idea of it is that you want a quarterback with an it factor like Mahomes or like Allen and Burrow and Lamar. And most of the time, even when you look at Matt Stafford's drives, at times Stafford's not afraid to throw the ball in places where he knows it's risky because he's willing to take the risk. And you got Puka and Devontae and multiple weapons. But even with that Rams game, even with that, they didn't even close it out. And that's what was hard. The Rams were controlling a lot, even on the run game, but they could not end up nailing it down. There were teams all throughout this weekend that had such good starts, couldn't close them. But that's what separates a lot of these teams that start great, look great, but then you look at the teams that face adversity in the face, and they know exactly what to do in those drives. That's Justin Herbert, and that's Jim Harbaugh. You watch those two in harmony, and they just look unstoppable. And last night in the game with the Chiefs, they were struggling to put points on the board. It was 9-6 at half. Like that's unheard of. And against the Giants, and the Giants' front seven was getting pressures. They tried any and every way, but yet Kansas City's offense, not that great, not that completely in sync. And the Giants, they couldn't produce anything on offense. Not one thing. And then you watch the Raiders get roundhoused against Washington and Marcus Mariota. So the Broncos and the Chargers were the two teams, as we mentioned, that could fight for this division over Kansas City. Kansas City's 1-2. I just fear for them because this offense is not buttoned up. But the Chargers, they knew exactly the things they needed to address. I'm watching a Rondé Gadsden, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, and even Omarion Hampton ended up coming alive late and at the times where you know that you needed to. But this is all part of Jim Harbaugh's plan. You watched him in Michigan. Ohio State is dominating in the Big Ten. In comes Michigan, his alma mater. They were a mess. They couldn't clean anything up. They couldn't even get anything up and on offense or even the defense right. Even with Denard Robinson. I remember watching the Michigan teams where, their head coaching was questionable and meh. And then their offense, I didn't even know what to think about it. Shea Patterson wasn't quite the quarterback that we knew that Jim would work well with. That's why him and J.J. McCarthy they worked out perfectly. And at the same time, Jim has a very close relationships with people that he knows could be trustworthy as his right-hand henchmen, which is why Greg Roman's in the position that he's in. Because now you got weapons, you got to be able to use them. And Jesse Minter, what a hell of a defensive coach he is. He's going to get head coaching jobs. You look at it too, even at the time when Michigan had when Michigan ended up having Mike McDonald, Like, he comes in, goes to Baltimore, his brother John, and then all of a sudden now he's the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, who have a pretty damn good defense. And it showed for itself. So Jesse Minter is going to get a lot of offers, but Jim Harbaugh is just a breath of fresh air. Charger fans could honestly feel so good about themselves. Now, next week they got the Giants, but they can feel good about themselves right now. And that's the best part, is that Kansas City, you are catching them in a vulnerable state where the offense is just completely stagnant. And the Chargers, they got experience, they got drive, they got everything that they're working with. No matter how quirky it may look like in the locker room, the Chargers it works. And when was the last time you've ever seen the Chargers really have something like this? Okay, a team with really good, like really nice uniforms. Anybody could look good in both uniforms. But this is different. Physical, able to overcome adversity. They listen to everything that happens up in major networks that criticize Justin Herbert. And right now, Herbert is playing out of his mind. 6 tutties, 1 pick in 3 games. And a lot of them that were deciding on crucial factors. I mean, they were able to come out and beat the Chiefs on the road in neutral territory. And then go on the road to the Raiders in Vegas and then come home against the Broncos, who both, like, they were physical, but yet the Chargers still managed to hang on. Like, that was a hell of a game. We enjoyed it. I had friends of mine, diehard Charger fans. They loved every bit of it. And like I said, they're taking the league by storm. You don't realize it, but sometimes this can happen when you get the coach, you get the culture right, and then you go and you start recruiting. This is how Jim Harbaugh wins. This is how Jim Harbaugh's method always seems to work. And I've noticed this because Jim, back then when he was in San Francisco, he was dealing with a lot. He was dealing with Trent Baalke and Jed York at San Francisco, and it didn't look like he was happy. He was just bitter. He didn't even have the quarterback that he wanted, like close to Andrew Luck. But Stanford, a tech school, gets him to 11-1. The San Francisco 49ers, they closed the book with Mike Singletary and had trustworthy guys, and they were physical. They ran in the trenches with Frank Gore, and they made it to a Super Bowl and faced against his brother. And then you go to Michigan, an alma mater, which you need to clean up that mess, and does exactly that. And you come to the Chargers, who haven't had a huge track record of winning as much, but this is all why Jim Harbaugh is respectfully one of the best coaches that you could see in the league. Just knows exactly how to really give that culture touch to some teams and just make it work. Let's go to the news.
And now, here we go. Hey everyone, it's story time. This is the hot press.
I mean, just Jim Harbaugh just knows exactly how to do it, and there's just nobody else like it. All right, well, some news that came out, and crushing news for the San Francisco 49ers, as Nick Bosa has officially been ruled out for the season with a torn right ACL. This is just horrible, man. And Nick Bosa now out again for the year. And Bosa, like, who came out and he actually played pretty well, and then up to the point where the injury ended up happening. So San Francisco's got a lot to really look at it. They're without their star pass rush, and even if they look at potentially up some moves, you got Mikael Williams, you got a couple of other good pass rushers up from there. Maybe not to the extent of Nick Bosa, but it's difficult. And so San Francisco's got a lot to really truthfully think about if they want to address up some defensive spots. But this is very, very interesting. The Atlanta Falcons, so we ended up getting some news up from there. So after an embarrassing 30-0 loss for the Atlanta Falcons, the Falcons ended up making a change as they had fired wide receiver coach Ike Hilliard on Monday, one day after being routed by their NFC South rivals the Carolina Panthers. So offensive passing game coordinator TJ Yates will assume the duties. So I was saying this before. I'm not making this up. I mean, Michael Penix is a very good quarterback. I'm not going to throw shade onto it and say like, oh, they should be starting, Kirk Cousins and stuff like that. I'm not going to throw it on him like that. Honestly, the offense itself was just stagnant. They needed a change. I just don't know with how this honestly was going to work itself out, but it's crazy to believe. But I mean, the Falcons have such a good offense. I talked with John Abraham last week, and I'm like, I just see a stagnant offense that just has not clicked. So they had to make a change. This is the change that they make, and we'll see what happens next week. Another news as well, the Arizona Cardinals, during the game against the San Francisco 49ers, the Cardinals have confirmed that James Conner needs surgery to his foot and not his ankle. And he will end up missing the entirety of the season from Jonathan Gannon, as he ended up discussing this. And he said this, and I quote, "One of our leaders, a captain, you hate that it happens. I feel terrible, but I know he'll take the right attitude and bounce back. Picking up that slack, both the player and the person, we're all going to have to collectively do it truthfully." Yeah, it's a bummer. And so now the backup running back, Trey Benson, that kid from Florida State, he's now going to end up taking up the everyday duties from now on, with James Conner being out for the season. But this is crucial. But a lot of key injuries right now are starting to happen, but you could see that from some teams. So it's unfortunate. I wish the best for James Conner, Nick Bosa, and a couple others that have to deal with, their surgeries. Even Najee Harris out for the season with a torn Achilles. So it's hard. And you know what? These games have been getting physical, competitive. Hard to really see that for some top players. So best of luck for James Conner and through his recovery. But yeah, it's hard for some of these key players. All right, that was the news.
And now, here we go. Hey everyone, it's story time. This is the Hot Press.
I figured I would take the moment and really talk about the Chicago Bears here for a second. What I watched in the highlights this past weekend, and Chicago, we knew in the last couple of games, they looked completely out of sync in week one. And then they just get trounced and routed against the Detroit Lions up to 52 points. And that was embarrassing in itself. But Ben Johnson has an opportunity to make it up for the second time. But they played the Dallas Cowboys, which the Chicago Bears, all the question that has been surrounding them is whether or not if Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams would be up and into the, on the same page. But it looked a lot cleaner. It looked better, but there's parts in which that the Chicago Bears offense really does have to work a few more things. But I watched Ben Johnson just, be a little more loose, getting into the scripted stuff. But then you finally see that connection between Ben and Caleb Williams. Caleb is very talented, but he comes with a lot of horsepower. But if you cannot control that is the stuff that oftentimes leads quarterbacks to failures. And that's part of the reason why the Ben Johnson, he said the things that he said about Tyson Bagent, but this is why you needed to structureize your quarterback, because he's a number one overall pick. He's highly talented, and that he needs a lot of guidance and structure. That's what he's there for. So Caleb Williams, I thought, actually had a pretty decent day. 19 to 28, 298 passing yards with 4 tutties and no picks. And you're playing against a Dallas defense that just completely let down the Cowboys offense and Dak. And look, the Cowboys, one way or another, they're going to have to figure out their defense. I already know it with their secondary and with how things are really rolling this year on their season. It's not really looking sharp. And that's going to end up being the Cowboys' problem all season long. You can't make this stuff up. So, and by the way, now CeeDee Lamb is going to be out for a few weeks. That's also not a good sign either. So this is kind of the interesting part in which, the Bears, they're only taking the next step forward. And that's what you want. So, again, Chicago, the way that they came up into this year with Ben Johnson, they're 1-2 right now. But the whole deal is that you needed to build a culture. You needed to revise this culture. You needed to make this offense better. The flashy stuff will come, but you got to be able to control the horsepower. I mean, you can't just, like for instance, I mean, my wife and I ended up upgrading a vehicle, and I kid you not, that thing's got some horsepower. That thing's got some zip for a hybrid. Okay, but you got to be able to learn to control and get the simple stuff. So that's one of the things that Ben Johnson, this is why he was hired in the first place. You got to be able to get control and structure. You got to be able to shape up Caleb Williams because as a highly talented draft pick, you got to make this work. And Chicago, they've never been known to be a flashy offense. They are always run the ball, get physical, play the great defense. That's always what they've been known for. But Ben Johnson sees it, and Ben Johnson's taking the steps that he needs to in order for them to figure themselves out. And Chicago actually looked pretty good this week. I ended on that note, but there are definitely some adjustments and a lot of these periods where they really have to figure that out. So again, it's a step in the right direction, and there's still more weeks to come. But this is why he was hired, is because that right there, getting the structure set, getting Caleb Williams comfortable, and then finding that groove, even when it becomes a game in which you got a defense that's like shredded cheese, and that's an opportunity for Caleb to really fix up his stuff. So this was interesting. I didn't want to bring this up without my co-host because I would have loved to have seen what his reaction was. The Green Bay Packers, they lost this week to the Cleveland Browns. There's going to be a bunch of shakeups with my top 10. I mean, I already see it. Teams that are probably going to end up falling back, teams that are probably going to stay put, and teams that are going to move forward for the right reasons. But two teams that we weren't even quite sure that was exactly how, that was the way it was going to end. The Rams and the Packers, two of the top 10 teams I had. And the Packers get limited to 10 points against Cleveland's defense, which I'm not throwing shade at them. They got a great defense. But part of their problem is that there's not a whole lot of consistency with their offense. And that's okay. But they have to figure it out. And then there's the Rams, who the Rams were up and in very good control. They were looking to get back against Philadelphia, which Jalen Hurts did not look like the same Jalen Hurts in that first half. And then all of a sudden, Philadelphia finds that lightning in a bottle late, and that stop by Jordan Davis, it was crazy and it was crucial. But what's funny is when I look at that, the Philadelphia Eagles and the way that they finished up that game, they reminded me of the Chiefs of last year. The team that won close games in one scores. You can't always flirt with that for very long. They won by 4 against Dallas. They won 3 against KC. And then they pull off that blocked field goal to go and score the touchdown and become the deciding factor. So Philadelphia, to me, feels a lot like Kansas City last year. They're in this position. And the Rams, what was unfortunate up from there, they got some problems on the offensive line. That was the one thing that, getting the pressures. But the funny thing is Philadelphia doesn't have an outside edge rusher. A lot of these things are getting pushed up front. But I even said this too, with the starting out with the drive, Zach Bond with the interception. This is why you re-signed Zach Bond. You couldn't find any other linebacker that physical, that athletic like him. And so that's hard to find in the market. They re-signed him. They knew what was going to happen with Milton Williams and with Josh Sweat, and they were okay with it. So, and then Green Bay from top to bottom, Like, they're a very talented team. 10 points. Like, nothing. They couldn't get anything right. And Jordan Love, like, there was no pivot. And you're trying to figure out some of those things. And then next thing you know, it's not clean. So I thought it was disappointing for those two teams between the Rams and Packers. But Philadelphia, I mean, I'm not going to harp very high on Philadelphia right now, but you certainly do have healthy question marks on certain things that you know that they cannot go around and play like there were, you could see from Jalen Hurts' face, like 11 straight plays where it seems like it's the same scheme. That's what made them lose 2 years ago. That's what made them go on a horrible streak. So if they do that again, I'm not saying hit the panic button, but that's not something that you want to end up walking into in an atmosphere where you could potentially end up making the playoffs again. And that's the kind of stuff that really hurts a lot of great teams, is drives like that. 11 straight, same things over and over again. That's by far the definition of insanity. You're hoping for different results. And Jalen Hurts is up over there screaming at you, bro, this ain't working. This is what made us lose 2 years ago. Like, stop. But Philadelphia, they dodged the bullet. They come away with the win. I don't expect them to, they won't meet their competition. That's why I was like, I think this team could be 12-5 or 11-6. It's not crazy of me to say that, because you're going to face competition. You're 3-0 right now. Good for you. But plays like that and drives, like Dallas could have almost stole that game away. Kansas City, with how stagnant their offense was, could have stole that game away. And the Rams, they were up there in cruise control, and they didn't even seal the game, and that was the difference maker. You could tell Sean McVay and all of them were pissed. So there's a lot of football left, and we got a lot to talk about it all throughout the week. But, yeah, I just thought this week was really interesting, and we got a good game amongst us tonight. Baltimore and Detroit. And look, as much as I don't want to pick on the Detroit Lions, I really don't. I just know Baltimore makes a lot to put points up. And most of that's what happens here tonight. I'm going to have my pick as well for a triple top bet from Martin Partner. Appreciate everybody for joining on. And of course, too, we got exciting news that's going to be coming up this week. So do not miss out on that. Tune in. Appreciate our guest, Blaine Bishop, former Titan safety, for coming up and sharing his expertise and his experiences playing with the Tennessee Titans. Lots of fun. Absolutely loved it. With more here on the Stake Sports Talk Show, Jake Silva signing off here, and we'll see you guys in the next episode here soon this week. Take care, everyone.